Hi and welcome to How It Works with Holger. Today, an idea from TMS CTO Bruno Ferenc, how to back up data from the cloud. A very, very important thing to be able to do with Delphi, because I'm I'm pretty certain that we all have this scenario that somebody stores some data in the cloud, or you want to exchange data in the cloud, and then you want to download that data and store it away somewhere else on an external hard drive on one of your servers. This will be an example that teaches you how you can access cloud storage and how you can download data from the cloud. And will be step by step. So I expect this video to be rather longer than shorter. Also, which services are going to be available? Well, we're going to use the product called FNC Cloud, and that gives us the opportunity to access the cloud services Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, Hubic, and Microsoft OneDrive. The sweet thing is this is all one component. You drop it on your form, and then you have the service property, which you see on the slide, and the service property allows you to set which service you want to use. That's how easy it is. And even better, you can switch it at runtime. So even if you use Dropbox, for example, you can use the very same implementation for Box, Google Drive, whatever. The only difference, of course, is the user authentication that you use, meaning username, password, whatever the service offers. And all these services use a so-called client ID and a secret client to access the cloud storage. I'm going to explain it in great detail for Dropbox. I created a new account so I can show you everything without losing anything of my privacy or any secure data. I just pushed a couple of image files from one of my books onto the main directory, and that's what we're going to back up using Delphi. So the applicable frameworks, that's the interesting thing, are going to be VCL, FireMonkey, Lazarus, and TMS WEB Core. So basically all that Delphi has to offer, and even more, because you can even address Lazarus if you want to. I'm going to show it in the VCL, my favorite framework of all time, so I'm going to use it whenever I have fun at how it works with Holger. So in order to get started, you need to create, in addition to the Dropbox account, you also need to go to dropbox.com/developers in order to create, they call it an application, and this application will allow access to your Dropbox. Your Delphi application will be that application that accesses the Dropbox account. That's how easy it is. You just have to set it up. And this is the same procedure you will do for each of those services. And if you create this application, for the API, you have to choose the scoped access, as they call it. They call it new. It means that you can configure each of the different user rights, what this application is allowed to do and whatnot. And here you see I want the full Dropbox accessible by the application. Of course, you can also say, hey, I just want this Delphi application only to access a certain folder. For example, you might have a backup folder or to be backed up folder on your Dropbox, and that's the folder that you're going to use. You need to give your app a name, and this name needs to be unique in the whole system of Dropbox. So this demo application, which I entered there on the slide, didn't actually work because demo application, somebody who was surprised had already taken that name. So that needs to be unique. And then, of course, you need to agree to the Dropbox API terms and conditions. This is what it looks like after you create your application. You get a tiny little icon with the application title. Most likely you will be taken right to this screen here, and the status application of the application is in development. And the first thing is click on the button, which is right now only showing one user. You want to enable more than one. So you can actually connect with up to 500 users to using this application space. Of course, there is enterprise solutions for Dropbox that allow you to allow more users to connect to that. And then here you see the app key. That is just a different name for client ID. This is what we will use. And then also the app secret. Guess what? I'm not going to show you. So the app secret is something you need as well in order to identify. So the Delphi client needs to know the application key and the app secret and the service you want to use. And then the most important thing, you need a URL or URI to redirect when you authenticate to this application. And what we're going to do, just take it as a first step, we're going to use localhost 127.0.0.1 on port 8888. Hopefully you don't have anything running on 8888. Otherwise you need to use a port that is not used on your system. That's it on the first page, the settings page. We go over to the permissions page, and to be honest, just enable everything on the individual scopes. Leave the team scopes alone because we want to be able to write and read everything. Tricky. Here's the tricky part. And right now, the documentation is being updated because Dropbox made a change to that recently. You have to make sure that this, the files.content.read, is checked as well. Because usually if you click one of these, this one is being clicked automatically. Meaning if you want to write, guess what? You also have to be able to read. That's the logic of this thing. However, this doesn't work the same way here. So if you click Files Content Write, which the current screenshot in the documentation is showing, this no longer is enabled as well. So what you have to do is click here, and then that will be enabled as well. At this point, the only thing you have to do, sometimes on the bottom, something like please confirm, you have to confirm your changes and you're set to go. I also named the application Demo Application Flix 1, so sadly that name is used now as well. Are you ready? Let's implement our backup application in Delphi. Before I start with the tiny little demo application that I already started to prepare, I would like to show what you get if you install FNC Cloud Pack. It is a different category called FNC Cloud on the tool palette in Delphi, and sadly Delphi 11 is not cooperating on my system, updating all the different icons. All these components do have icons indeed, and I might simply restart Delphi. Yeah. Sadly, the restart didn't help, so I can't talk Delphi into updating all the beautiful icons. So in addition to all the components like Dropbox, Box, that are designated for one single service, you also get components that are designed for multiple services. And that's the one that we're going to look at today. And you find it right here. It starts with storage. So I'm going to type storage. And once again, Delphi takes a long time to filter these. There we go. And here we have the TMS FNC Cloud Storage Services. And wow, we get an icon. So here is the icon. And for the properties right here, you see the service property. And that is the key property of the component, where you can select which service you want to use. Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, Hubic, and or Microsoft OneDrive. These are all supported as part of the Cloud Storage Services component. And by just switching the property, you switch the service that this component is going to use. As promised, I'm going to skip ahead to the stuff that is not really relevant to set up a new application, a VCL application, and I dropped two buttons. One is called Connect, button Connect, and the other one is button Download. As you might imagine, Connect is used to connect to the cloud service, Dropbox in our case, and Download is going to be the button that is going to initiate the download or the backup of the files in the root directory. We're just going to do the root directory with recursion and everything, but those are programming techniques that you're very well aware of, and I don't need to teach you. So I'm just going to focus on the downloading process from cloud storage. So looking at the cloud storage component, let me drag it out here. Oops, this is new. Didn't know that was even possible. So here we have the object inspector for the component, and I named it cloud storage. I set the service to CSS Dropbox at design time. I could also set it at runtime, but the key property is the authentication property, or key properties, I should say, and the persist tokens. The authentication property is used to set the client ID, the secret, and the callback URL. And these have to match what you get from your cloud provider. So that means in our case that we will set the callback URL to localhost, what we set with the port 8888, and we'll set the client ID to the app key that was provided to us, and the secret we will set to the secret that is also provided by Dropbox. Be careful. You can set these at design time, or I should be more precise, you can set these at design time, but if you save the form, close the project, reopen the project, those will be empty. And the reason is TMS considers these settings very, very much a security risk if you store them as part of the DFM, because they're not going to be encrypted, and if you compile your application, they will be in plain text visible, and people are able to read them and are able to connect to the cloud storage, to your cloud storage to be precise, and use that. So putting them into the DFM file or as part of your form is not good practice. Set them at runtime, read them from a configuration file. The configuration file can be encrypted, and that's the way to go. The next thing is, if you connect to the cloud service, no username or password is being transmitted. As a matter of fact, you have to provide your username and password, and the username and password to log into Dropbox is not stored inside of the application. Instead, it uses the normal Dropbox mechanism. That's called the OAuth 2 authentication. And my fellow YouTuber Jolt did a YouTube video on this topic, OAuth 2. Look for it on the TMS channel. He gives you a great introduction how this authentication mechanism works. Also, I did a video a while back on the Fitbit web API, explaining it also in great detail how you can even build components for that kind of stuff yourself. And I'm still going to explain it here in detail, but you might be like, what kind of information is going back and forth? Those videos are putting more emphasis on the authentication. The persist tokens that are stored on your disk make it quicker, meaning if you log in once and if you use the persist tokens that are being loaded from either your INI file, you can use the registry or a database that makes it even cooler to use. You don't need to enter the username and password each time. That makes it easier for your application to access the Dropbox every single day, and the expiration of your Dropbox token might be a week, so you only have to log into this thing once a week. That also implies that you actually have to enter your username and password in those cases. You can't store your username and password somewhere and inject it into this. You actually have to be there to actively access your Dropbox. And that is, for me, a very good thing, because that makes sure that your privacy is being honored, that there is no way that an application can access your Dropbox or other cloud service without you actually providing your credentials. So, I know, big introduction, a lot of talk, very little code so far, but the reason is the code for this project is going to be very little, but I have to motivate it enough so you see why there's only so little code and what the advantages are using this component, how much work you actually save. Because you don't need to write any of the API interaction code manually. This is all wrapped inside of the component. Let me look at the Dropbox first, what is stored inside of the Dropbox. So dropbox.com, I should see the data that's in there. Yes, so here it is. So I just uploaded a couple of screenshots. The file is 01 PNG to 06 PNG, and they are stored in the main folder. And these files hopefully will be on the hard disk when we run our application to back them up. So first, connecting. So we double click here, and let me hook that back up to the left side here, because we don't need it that much actually. And so we call the connect method. We define the connect method, procedure connect. And I also did one other thing I can show you. I simply defined constants so I can assign the properties for the authentication easier. I'm going to show you. So let's implement connect. And cloud storage is our component, and authentication is the sub-property. And we have the client ID. What am I going to assign? Well, Dropbox _ client ID. And the same thing we are going to do for the secret and Dropbox _ secret. These constants are defined in the ukeys pass file that I created. I just simply created two constants here. If you're interested about mechanisms, how to even build something like key storage that you can load as a resource in your applications, if you had a look at my hands-on with Delphi book number 2, I provide a good solution for different mapping services for FNC maps, and the same approach can be used for the cloud services and FNC Cloud. So there you get a little bit more detail because I even encrypt all the information in the file, and the file contains multiple keys for multiple services. So if you're interested, have a look at that. The link for that, just to be sure, I'm talking about this one, TMS software hands-on with Delphi FNC maps. This is what it looks like. And this has all the information how to handle all the different keys. Okay, back to the source code. We also need to set where we want to store the persistent tokens, or persist tokens dot key, and this gets a file name. We'll implement that right away. And then we do need cloud storage dot authentication. We also need the callback URL. And that one we can hard code here. It's HTTP not localhost. It has to match precisely. So if you use localhost, you have to use localhost here. I rather use the numbers. So that's it. And the last thing is for the connect that we actually call the connect method. The only thing missing is where do we store the keys? What is the file name? And the easiest way to do this is, for example, to use the either your documents directory, your applications directory, depending on what your usage or what your security permissions are on your disk. So just for ease, I'm going to use the T path dot, and then you can get, for example, your home path, the documents path, and that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use the documents path, and I'm going to use the constant file name tokens.ini. And how do we combine a path and a file name in Delphi, or I should say in modern Delphi? Tpath combine, comma, and that's what we can use. So this construct here tpath combines the directory, the documents directory on our system for our user profile with the file name tokens.ini. And this concludes how we can connect to the Dropbox service. Why the Dropbox service? Because inside of our cloud storage component, we have set the service to CSS Dropbox. Now that we call connect, this will actually initialize the connection process. However, this is an asynchronous process, meaning after calling connect, here, this line is being executed right away. So anything that happens after a successful connection can't be written here. It has to be written inside of the event that is being called. And we find that inside of the component. So go into the component, we find an event which is called onConnected. And this is exactly where we can put stuff to simply say, oh, we are connected, if you want some user interaction, or where you can get the folder list and these kind of things. So onConnected, I'm simply going to say show message and say successfully connected to Dropbox. That's it. And if we run this, I click on connect and the web browser opens, and now Dropbox takes over and says, hey, somebody wants to connect to your Dropbox. You can say continue. And what does this application want to do? It wants to edit content, it wants to view and manage, and so on. As we selected everything, this will give access to everything. So we say allow, and boom, that's it. Why didn't I have to enter my username and password? Because on this computer, I already had my Dropbox credentials stored. I was logged in. Okay, so that is the reason why now we can close the browser window. And in the background, here's our Delphi application telling me successfully connected to Dropbox. That's it. Okay, let's see. Let's do it a different way. Also, tokens INI, let's look out for that first. So we go to the Explorer, go to Win32 debug, and there should be file. Well, where did we create it? We didn't create it in the output directory, we created it in the documents path. So I'll go to documents, and now we see tokens.ini. And this file contains, I can't show it to you, it contains my secret key and all these kind of things. So if I start the application again, let's do that, and click connect, I'm connected right away without the browser opening. Okay, so deleting this file, and also go into Dropbox, and then logging out by saying, okay, log out, sign out, closing everything, and now restarting the application, connect. Now I think I have to completely log in, specifying my username, password. See, this is my username, my password. I have to click sign in and ignore this. I don't know where this is coming from these days. And before we connect to this app, continue, allow, and that's it. And I can go back to the Delphi application, successfully connected to Dropbox. That's our programming. That's the event that I implemented, the onConnected. So now that we know we are connected, I just don't want to show something. Instead, I want to enable the download button. So I said download button enabled equals true. And I want to say button connect dot enabled equals false. Also, when we start the application to implement the form create by double clicking on the form, we say button connect and enabled equals true, and button download dot enabled equals false. So now we have the true application state resembled in the button state. Of course, you could put it in a view model or something, but just for demo purposes, leave it as simple as this. Connect. And you see, as soon as we're connected, I'm able to click download. We haven't implemented anything yet. So that's the next thing we do. Download, click download, implement it. So I'm going to say procedure, download. And download is nothing but getting the list of files and then iterating over the list of files. And for that, we can call cloud storage dot. And then we have a method get folder list. And that gives us a list of all the files or items. More, let's be more or less specific, all the items inside of a folder. And we can also specify a folder that we want to start in. And if we specify nil, which is the default, it is going to be root. So this is asking the cloud storage to provide all the items, list them in the root folder. And it is not going to return a list of file names. No, it's going to return a list of items, which could also be folders and stuff. The key here to remember is that these items that we're getting here could also be folders if we had folders inside of a Dropbox. But I know in the folder that I'm using, it's only going to be files, so we can abstract from that. But just as for connect, also get folder list is asynchronous, meaning we go here right away afterwards. Okay, so again, we go to the component, look at the events, and we see on get folder list. So this is being triggered or called as soon as all the items have been received. So in get folder list, we find that we have a list of items that have been returned, and we also get information about the request. If you want to go down on the network level, we're not going to do that here. So now we have A items, and it is of type TMS FNC Cloud items. That implies A items dot that there is a list of items of type TMS FNC Cloud item singular. And that is exactly what we're going to iterate. And we can use the new for in loop from Delphi. So it's like for in. Then we can say L item in A items do. And L item, we have to declare L item TMS FNC Cloud item. Just as an aside, this type here, and that might give you a little bit of trouble, is defined in TMS FNC Cloud storage. So this should be added automatically to your uses clause. If it is not added manually, it should be added automatically. But sometimes I've seen that there is some issues, and the same for TMS FNC Cloud Base. This has nothing to do with the TMS component pack or with the FNC components. This is just something that sometimes happens, that the users class is not updated with data types that are referenced inside of the units that are being used by the component. So if you get some kind of issue when you want to compile your source code and you get the message, hey, I don't have the type TMS FNC Cloud item or TMS FNC Cloud items, add those two units here, or make sure that they have been added, TMS FNC Cloud Base and the TMS FNC Cloud Storage. Okay, so, and this means for all the items inside of A items, we assign each, we iterate all of them, and the current item is always going to be in L item, so we can say L item dot, and now you can decide what you want to do with this item. You can get its file name, you can get the folder, you can get the item type. That is very, very important. So let's look at that, at the item type. And this is yet another type, TMS FNC Cloud item type. And you see, you can look if it's a file or if it's a folder. And if it is a file, we want to download it. So we say if item type equals CI file. I think that was the thing that was used, CI file, correct. Then begin. And how do we download? Well, we simply call on cloud storage dot download. And what do you want to download? Which item? You simply say L item. And what is the file name that you want to use? Well, we construct that. We say L file name, and L file name is a string. And yet again, we're going to use the documents directory. Very simple. I'm going to say L file name is, yes, little capital N, again, tpath.combine. And what are we going to combine? We're going to combine the tpath.get documents directory or documents path, comma. And now we don't have a constant there. No, we can use litem.filename. So that will give us a file name inside of our local document directory, and that's what we tell cloud storage download this item to that target file. And we can call them all right after another. It doesn't matter. The component is going to line it up nicely for us, and these requests are going to be sent out like bang, 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 and then they're being dealt with in the background. This is also not a blocking operation, because if we see here, we also have like on download file. That is something that is being called as soon as it's been downloaded, because here you get the result. But we're not going to implement that. We're already done. This is the nice thing. So let me just prove it to you. There's in the documents folder, there's no files. So we run this. Hopefully it compiles. We click connect, and then we can click download. And I should have maybe given some sort of message, but if we switch over to here, you see 3, 4, and it's nice to see that the order of these things changes. Like, even though 1 has most likely been called first, still 3 was created first, then 5, then 4. And these files are valid, even though for whatever reason, I get like this strange icon. There it is. Those are screenshots from the upcoming Raspberry Pi tutorial that I'm writing a book chapter for. So these are just screenshots, as you can see. And those are exactly the files that are inside of my Dropbox. And there you go. Same images. And this is how we can download them. No big deal, in my opinion. So let's summarize what we did. First, we selected a cloud storage provider off the list of the available ones. Available right now, as of February 2022, we have Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, Hubic, and Microsoft OneDrive. You can switch between services either at design time or dynamically at runtime. Doesn't matter. In order to connect to a cloud provider, you have to register some sort of key or application, whatever they call it, on the provider side. I showed you how to do it at Dropbox. You will receive a client ID, a secret, and you will have to set a callback URL. Those things have to be assigned before you connect, meaning if you connect, looking at the code, we assign the client ID, the secret, and then we also have to, if we want to, we don't have to. If you don't want to store this, okay, if you want to enter your password each time, you can simply, with the persist tokens, you simply don't specify a key, then it won't get stored. Plain and simple. Then you have to do it over and over and over again. But why would you want to do that? So the key is actually the file name in this case. If you choose registry, it's a registry key. If you choose database, look in the documentation what key is, probably the table name. I'm just guessing here. And tpath.combine, we combine tokens.ini with the documents path. This file is being used to store the login information. And then we set the callback URL just as we set it in the Dropbox Application Center app console, it's called formally, and we call connect. And if the connection is successful, we simply switch the button state. And if we click on the button to download, we initialize getting the folder list. And as soon as we have received the folder list, the cloud storage get folder list event is triggered, and we can iterate all the items, which is passed as a parameter to the event. We can iterate each of the elements using the L-item variable. L-item is of type TMS FNC Cloud item. And we have the item type, which can be either file or folder. We just want to pick the files. The files, we construct the file name consisting of the document folder of the local computer and the file name, just the file name part, meaning if we look at the Dropbox, 01 PNG, 02 PNG, and so on. And then we call download for each item, and this will trigger the download for all your files inside of your Dropbox. Of course, and this is something you can do on your own. If it's a folder, you can download the files for that folder and trigger a recursion to download all the folders from your Dropbox or whatever storage provider easily and quickly that way. One final thing before I let you go, and I actually did forget, so I might look a tiny little bit different than before because I added this short segment a couple of days later after producing the initial part of this video. I promised to let you know how easy it is to switch between other cloud providers. So it is actually just very, very easy without requiring you to rewrite nothing of the code that we wrote today. What you need to do in the connect method is, because right now everything depends on the design time setting for the service property, we set it to Dropbox. So you need some sort of condition. You need to read this from a configuration file where you assign the service property at runtime, like I show you right here. So you can say cloud storage.service equals CSS, and then code completion gives you all the options you have: Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, Hubic, Microsoft OneDrive. And after you set the service, the property for the client ID, secret, has to be adapted for those settings for your Microsoft service authentication. So you need to go to, let's say you want to switch to Microsoft OneDrive, you would say CSS, Microsoft OneDrive, and then you get from Microsoft, following some sort of steps, kind of like the ones I showed you for Dropbox in the beginning, and you get a client ID and a secret. You assign those instead of the Dropbox ones. Of course, you have to make sure that your application is able to distinguish between them, and then nothing else changes. Of course, the callback URL, you can configure that the same way. You can use the same URL, or you could even make that variable concerning which service you're using. Still, nothing of the actual programming changes. Let me fix this to CSS Dropbox again so the code works just fine as it is. So nothing here. Get folder list. The FNC Cloud framework is going to do all the work for you. If you use Microsoft, it's going to request everything considering your Microsoft storage. And the same for download. Everything is being downloaded according to the protocols to the API from Microsoft. That's the key with the FNC Cloud Pack. And what makes it even more worthwhile to learn this component package is the fact that this can be used not only in the VCL, as I'm using it right now. You can use the same source code with FireMonkey, LCL, and TMS WEB Core. So you're really, really flexible with your implementation when it comes to cloud services. And of course, as it is TMS software, you can be sure if there's other cloud storage providers up on the horizon, they're going to provide an implementation for that as well in the future. Also, always email them, support@tmssoftware.com, if you think there is a cloud provider that should be added to the pack, or you can ask if a certain provider is going to be added in the future. So hopefully you've seen how easy it is to access cloud storage with FNC Cloud Pack from TMS Software. Let me just show you where you find it. If you go to Products and you go to Cloud Service Access, you go to Cross-Platform Cloud Pack, because you can pick whichever framework you want, VCL, Web, FireMonkey, Lazarus. You can write solutions for all these wonderful operating systems and browsers, of course. Browsers, because TMS WEB Core is web applications. And it's for Delphi, C++ Builder, Red Studio, and for the Lazarus IDE. The product is called TMS FNC Cloud Pack, and it is based on TMS FNC Core, which you get as part of the product if you buy the Cloud Pack. Here you see what other services you have. You also have translation services in addition to the storage services and contacts, payment. All of that is included in the package. I've just shown you a very small part of what is supported. And as always, you get a detailed manual, free support, a guide how to get the secret key and all that kind of stuff for all the different services provided. And of course, you can download a trial to try it out first on your own system if it works out for you before you make the purchase. And I really hope you enjoyed this episode of How It Works with Holger. If you need more support, help from me, just write me an email. I'm happy to help as always.